Hey, this is Apori from Team Immunity, and I'm here with Yuki.
Hi.
And this is our Badlands video. Okay, so we're here on Badlands mid at the moment. As you can see, this point is quite open planned, and does tend to favour both scouts and demomen. The reason for this is basically due to the sightlines. At each of the points that these scouts and demomen can enter the point, which is here, over there, and in some cases here. These classes have very open visibility. They're able to move around the map and they're able to put damage on anyone at any point in time. Okay, so on a standard Badlands rollout, basically once the demoman comes out of drop down and decides where he wants to go, it will begin to determine what your team will do on mid. So as he comes out of drop down, you've sort of got three options. The demo may choose to go through valley, which is the least common option, and usually when you screw up you jump. The demo may choose to go through house and then come out near crates, or the demo may choose to go out through window. So if we just come through house here, James, just come in.
Okay, so if your demoman hits his jumps in his rib, which he will, then he'll arrive here roughly, at the ideal time, which is about 9:44. And what your demoman immediately does is lobs his first sticky to the other demoman. And he's just looking to pressure the other demoman and damage the enemy scouts, just getting your team early positioning on the point. So this is what typically an aggressive team would do, is they just have their demoman coming straight out the house and just putting that early pressure on. Just allows your team just to have a much easier time. So you typically lob your stickies at this area called the hoodoo, and this main area, the house exit, hitting the other demoman.
And that's really important. Like hitting those first few stickies basically decides the rollout, and in some cases it'll decide the round. Like if your demoman gets really good stickies on the scouts, those scouts are going to not only be knocked out of the fight for those 2 seconds, but they'll either be draining heals or taking the health kit. Like the significance of that then sort of comes in on the flank play. Like your demoman will be able to push forward and get control of the point. I mean, he still has to be a bit careful of a bombing soldier, but at the same time as he's doing that, you're going to have your Roma pretty much jumping up from valley. And if there's no scout here to contest him because of the demoman damage, he's going to be able to pretty much walk all over their team.
And eventually by that time, once your Roma's jumped in as well, your pocket will be coming through valley with his full heal, be able to support his demoman, jumping up typically on the train, and just looking for any aggressive players that come onto your demoman.
So I mean, like, it makes sense that the demoman arrives first to mid and is essentially probably the most important player on mid. There are some times where a member of your team might go huge, like your Roma might jump in and get 3 kills, or you might have a scout that pushes under, or a scout that immediately kills their bombing soldier and then gets 3 or 4 mop kills. But quite often it really is just that demo war. Like your demo shouldn't be tunneling the other demo man, like, you should be able to get pressure on the whole team. And doing that really does free sort of your whole players up, like the rest of your players up. I guess, James, we should probably tell them a bit about what these other players are going to be doing. So we've focused on where the demo's coming. As the rest of your team on this standard rollout will just be coming out pretty much down here. They'll come up through valley. You're going to split off at that valley point. Your pocket and one of your scouts is going to come up into hoodoo, and your Roma and probably your other scout is going to come across and play near maintenance or shithouse. From there, it's kind of where different teams and different players will start to kind of create their own Badlands mid. Some roamers or some pockets like to play very aggressive, some scouts like to play through mate, others like to play under. Everyone mixes it up a little bit, but you can definitely tell just from watching a player for a few rounds what they prefer, whether they prefer a really aggressive early jump or not.
And the thing is, you've also got to be wary and mindful to adapt to what the other team is doing. You can't just have one set thing on a rollout, you've got to adapt. So, for example, when I look at a Badlands rollout, I'm thinking, okay, I want to jump aggressively there, train. But if I get to this hoodoo area here, and I see a soldier coming really fast under the bridge, I'm going to have to fight him, else he kills my medic. So I've already just there adapted my rollout to better my team, because if I decided to jump aggressively, my team wouldn't have been able to deal with that soldier there. It's just a prime example of adapting to what the other team does. The important
thing with Badlands mid, probably the most important thing on all 3 of the different demo options, is your comms. Players have to have really good comms. A bombing soldier has to be called pretty much before he jumps. He should be able to be seen by the scout that's going maintenance, or he should be able to possibly be seen by the demo man depending on how fast your demo is. Your flank needs to know where their demo's playing. If their demo's playing at window, it's a totally different situation to if their demo's playing back at train. You just need to be calling pretty much everything, and then from there it's kind of your team's able to kind of capitalize on those general roles that each of those classes have. So your Roma will be able to put pressure on the enemy team and force them back, or get those those clutch kills, and your scouts will be able to support and mob effectively, and your pocket soldier will be able to protect your medic. I mean, they're just the most general rules, but it's from them that kind of any difference sort of arises. Okay, so the second rollout that your demo man can choose to do is often when he's sort of weaker than the other demo man, or he feels like he's getting rushed too much by enemy players. And that's for him to play in window, which is pretty much where James is standing now. I mean, with the window change recently, you can't shoot through it, which I'll do just there. So stickies do actually get caught on the window, so it's slightly different and might lead to more demo men playing on the balcony, but that's still kind of left, like, yet to be seen. So the prime focus with this rollout is pretty similar. Like, most of your team still wants to play in a similar way. The general aim of each class is similar. You still want to have a scout sort of playing near back of train, just protecting your team that's coming up through Valley, and you still want to have players playing aggressively, so that'll be one scout typically and your roamer. I guess the main difference is what your demo is doing, James, if you want to just talk about that one.
Yeah, good thing for a start is that playing window, it allows a lot more heals onto the rest of your team, so your scouts and soldiers can get a lot more heals. Meanwhile, your demo is just, he's practically protected from damage. I mean, granted, a soldier could jump at him, but as you can see by this little area, it's a lot easier for a demo to protect himself. So generally, a demo man's just going to be fairly passive with his stickies. I mean, he can lob some stickies on the train over there, as you see, to just damage scouts who will jump up there, maybe their soldiers, and just protect his team's train as well. Just allow his team to get into the actual middle point and just be able to do what they want. And then the demo man has the option of, okay, so I'm on full health, I've done a decent amount of damage. Do I want to, say, drop onto the Hoodoo here and just apply a bit more damage towards their train? Is my team doing well? Or if my team's doing bad, I can just back off into Valley, have a free exit, or take a more kind of pseudo-aggressive approach and just walk up the slope with your medic, meet up with the rest of your team and just push across point. Kind of going back towards a standard demo house rollout, only it's a bit slower.
I mean, demo window is kind of seen as the safe option, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
quote-unquote safe. Like, I mean, the main risk with demo window is that, like, you can't, like, while you can't really support really aggressive play into the Valley. Like, you feel like, if you just look at the position, you think, yeah, demo man should be able to stop a lot of that. But the thing is, when you're playing in window, or even on balcony, like, an aggressive soldier or even a scout has a lot of option in going under the point or even just rushing over the point and dropping straight into you. And at the same time, it is a bit easier for the other team to take control of your crate and then just play from there. So your team really needs to be kind of just wary of it. Like, don't dedicate too many players to watching for it, but you just do really want to know that it could happen and then be able to react to it.
And to touch on the effectiveness, as you were saying earlier, it's just the window change is actually quite big. It's a lot harder to actually put spam out from here.
Yeah, I guess one of the main benefit though is that it's actually a bit harder to be killed, if you ask me. Like, just playing as a roamer, like, it's one less option for getting into house and killing the demo man. Like, sometimes I would just jump directly into window if they were standing on there. So I guess that's one different change.
Yeah.
I mean, demo window sort of ties into the playstyle. It ties in a little bit to demo Valley as well, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, so the third and final kind of demo man option is your kind of go-to if you screw up. So if you do the bulk, you're going to want to go Valley. Basically, the focus on Valley is if you don't hit your jump and you can't get into house, you're just going to walk along where James is if he comes on the other side of Hoodoo for me and continues through Valley. And you're going to want to basically put spam up onto their crates and just across the point. The thing about Demoman Valley is it's fairly safe for your team in some ways, unless their team just gets hyper aggressive. So I guess it's safe as long as they're not too aggressive, which isn't really all that much protection.
Yeah, like if you talk about the rollout, sorry, but if you talk about the rollout, it's just there's one important thing to note is that if you will fail your jump, then you're going to be on about 60 health when you come into this valley area here, and it just kind of slows your heal rotations on your team a lot. So it just delays your demo man's potential damage. I mean, he could take a potential scattergun here, and that'll just delay his crit heal. Or your pocket could take a scatter damage and delay his crit heal, and that could just kind of spell doom for your rollout. And if that happens, don't be afraid to just concede the rollout. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You have 6 players up, and you can just defend the second point.
Yeah, basically, that's really where like the roamer comes in. I mean, if your demo screws up, you've got to do everything that you can to protect them. Like, your scouts will be able to kind of stop some aggression, but it's really going to come down to you tying their team up. Now, where Yuki is one of your options. You can kind of come through Valley and just do a standard jump. but it sort of isn't direct enough if your demo's in valley. Like, that gives them plenty of time to react to the fact that your demo caked his rollout, and they'll just kind of push into you and win. So what I like to do when Bulk fails his jump, and obviously I've got a lot of practice with this because he's a great guy, is I'll come across here and I'll just jump from house directly into their valley. So I'll just jump straight in, maybe land on Hoodoo, maybe land here, maybe I'll even just jump into there and not do anything. Like, the focus here isn't even doing damage, it's basically just getting in their face and stopping their team from being able to walk up onto the point and then get really aggressive into valley. The rest of your team is kind of doing their standard stuff. If I jump in like that though, I'm obviously going to be calling that I'm doing it. If I jump in like that and I get a good early rocket onto a scout or onto the demo man or even onto the medic, I'm definitely going to be screaming about it, and Antwa or one of our scouts, maybe Sheep, will be pushing under the point or even across just from the back of train, and they're going to be looking to mop on that. So sometimes it's kind of a mixed bag. Like, your demo failing the rollout can actually lead to good things, because if your demo gets out of valley safe, he's basically avoided the first half of the rollout, which is where he's almost at more risk than at any other point in time. So I guess, James, the other option is, like, rather than him coming up through valley, we can talk about like the under rollout, which is kind of a bit of a nuance, but it's
it's a bit weird. You can just have your team practically just push up into their slope. It's extremely aggressive. Like, it's probably one of the most aggressive rollouts, funnily enough, is that you just practically have your combo demo soldier medic just pushing into their valley and just battling them here. I mean, you kind of bypass the top area, but you're just putting a lot of pressure here and you're just aiming to just get kills. And you're all in with this, all or nothing, because your demo and soldier are pretty much in Africa. So if you fail here, you're probably gonna lose Spire at the very least. So you just want to just go all in with it.
Yeah, this is 100% another rollout where your roamer really needs to be in their face. Like, you want to be there before your team is in trouble underneath. Like, it kind of means that you have to know that your team's failed rollout, so your demo really has to be on top of things. But, like, if you can get into their face and do some entry damage beforehand, their other team isn't going to like the fact that you're walking on the point. And it's the same again, like, I mean, I know I'm talking about roamer a bit here, but it's the same again if your combo decides, instead of coming up here, this is like another rollout that you can do at any point when your demo goes in any of the 3 locations. If your pocket decides to go through maintenance, you sort of want to be doing the same thing. You don't also want to go through maintenance. You want to either jump from valley, I'll just show you quickly. You either want to jump into house and then jump from house like I did before, or you want to jump from valley, just from around here, up onto window, and then you want to jump straight from window onto back of train and start putting pressure on. It's fine if you die. If you're standing here, pretty much their whole team, even the scout that's playing here, is going to be shooting at you, and your team can just walk straight through, in through valley, or your soldier can jump around while your medic gets in safe, and you can just crush their back of train. Okay, so kind of the last thing that we want to talk about on Badlands mid is the first 3 seconds of every rollout. So pretty much on most maps, and mid especially on Badlands, the first 3 seconds are really important. It pretty much changes everything that your team is looking to do. In those first 3 seconds, you'll get the early call on a bombing soldier, you'll get the demo man's positioning, and you'll know whether any of their players are being stupidly aggressive, like a scout under the point, or their medic is even playing in a different position in some cases. So pretty much, after you hear that call based on like where their team is playing, it's going to change what you're trying to do. In some cases, that kind of just comes down to what your roamer decides to do. Unless you hear that they're all kind of zerging back of train, in which case your entire team needs to adapt and change what they're doing. Otherwise, it really just depends on what your aggressive players are going to do. So if you hear that their demo is in standard position as a roamer or as a scout, the most typical thing to do is just come into valley and then just jump straight up. That's the most typical thing to do. Put 1 or 2 rockets onto the demo, but before that you'll probably shoot 1 rocket onto the scout that's playing around here, because then when your scout comes out of maintenance, it's an easy one-shot duel. And then from there you'll kind of look to play around. You don't want to die unless you're going to trade for the demo or a scout or even like 100 damage on the medic. It's usually worth it if he's still coming out of Hoodoo. But in many cases you can just look to drop down, play underneath, and then play from there. So that's pretty much your general strategy when the demo is playing in-house. If you're looking for a more aggressive one, you can do the jump I was talking about before, where you just jump straight off this and you jump into here. Or you can just look to walk under the point. So those kind of same things work for both your aggressive scout and your aggressive soldier. Like, they can all do each of those things. You can plus forward across the point, or you can plus forward up through maintenance. Anything works. If you hear that their demo is playing from battlements, it kind of changes things. When I hear that a demo is playing for battlements, I might still do like an aggressive jump from here into valley if I feel like I can catch one of their players out. I'll do maybe the standard jump and just look to kill that scout and then consolidate back of train and take back of train. Or I'll come in, play either from here and jump straight across into battlements, just from this kind of crate here. Or I'll come through here, kind of playing a bit slow, because most demos will sort of delay here, they'll delay there, or they'll jump onto hoodoo, or they'll drop down. And then when I'm not being watched, I'll just jump from here into house, maybe kill the demo, and then just sort of shoot at their team and play behind them, like play in through here and get kills. Okay, so assuming that your team won mid, usually you will take this choke area for free. However, if you don't, so if they have their whole team up basically, or if at any other point in phase play you find your team stuck here while they're defending choke, we kind of just want to touch on how you will go about breaking this hold. Spire, including choke, is probably the most dynamic point in the game. There's a really strong focus on your team's ability to DM, and it's mostly about getting a player advantage. It's not so much about Ubers. Choke is a little bit about Ubers, and Uber definitely helps you throughout the entirety of Spire. But the main focus on Spire is getting a player advantage and then being able to capitalize on that by capping the point and killing the rest of their team. So James, if you just want to talk about how we're going to go about breaking a choke hold.
Yeah, like touching on that for a start, as you were saying, Uber isn't that significant on Spire. That is true, but a lot of the time teams will just have like their roaming soldier just jump around the choke, try and force the other team's Uber, and that's not really to just use your Uber to counter Uber and just kill them. What it typically does is it forces the other team back because they're starting to think, well, we've got no Uber advantage, no Uber now, so we're going to just back off a bit, and then forces them back, and then that just gives your team a more favorable position.
Yeah, like while Uber isn't the biggest thing on Spire, like if you Uber a team into a team with no Uber and you're able to catch them out holding forward or catch them out when they aren't already holding back on battlements, like you're going to be able to kill them. Like it's still important, it's just not the be all and end all. Like having an Uber advantage won't necessarily mean you'll be able to cap the point on Spire.
Yeah, because it's so easy for the other team to slow you down. So like if we go over here, it's just so easy for a demo man to just put damage on here. You can put damage on the haunter / balcony kind of area. You can put damage on the jump pad, Pride Rock area, and just even damage on the point if you start getting pressured back.
Yeah, so like you really want to be able to force their team back basically. So like the standard default hold, if it's an equal Uber situation, so if neither team has Uber, it's kind of equal players, is around this area. So like what you want to do when you're breaking it, like they will have some players holding resupper in house, and we'll touch a bit more on that when we talk about defending. What you want to do to break this hold, you've got a couple of options. Typically your combo, so most of your team will be playing around this area, so this is just while you're in phase play. And you'll have like a scout maybe sitting over there, or just in valley, just kind of floating around. And I, as a soldier, usually like to sit in-house. I like to sit really forward in-house, just to stop them peeking, get early kills. Maybe force an Uber if they're pushing in, because unlike on Spire, Uber is huge attacking mid. And yeah, and then from there, you sort of just are able to collapse on them. Now, when you're actually ready to break their hold, you've got a couple of options. Your roamer might come out of house and come around here and just look basically to jump onto their team, like James was saying, forcing them back. So your team would usually filter in behind. Otherwise, you could just muscle straight in with Uber. That's another possibility.
Yeah, typically the easiest way to do it from the touching on the muscling into them with Uber, typically the easiest way to do that is from the house area, or haunter as a lot of people call it. Because a lot of teams will just have their combo just in this general forward area, as we were pointing out earlier. You just want to force a really scrappy fight here. You don't really want anyone else in your team coming through unless someone sneaks behind, but you just want to force a scrappy fight, force a multi-Uber, just force them into a bad position, just something they don't want to do, and just get as much damage as you can, and just allow room for the rest of your team to come in. Yeah,
like that's really important. Like most of the time you won't be bombing a soldier, honestly. Like most of the time you won't bomb a soldier out of house, or you won't bomb a soldier out of resup or corner to force them back. You'll usually just end up interlocking in an Uber. And the interlock, personally I think the interlock really kind of advantages the aggressive team if you've got a strong flank, just because while that's happening, pretty much at least one of your scouts and your roamer is really going to be pushing into resup. Like their team is really going to want to kind of filter away from resup up Stonebridge and support their team rather than just sitting back and holding. So they'll leave like maybe one soldier. Once you force that player into resup, it's really easy to get players up into behind through drop down, or even just to go behind up through resup, like I'll do now, and just say as a soldier, get on Stonebridge, go into the point. Or by now, because the Uber will probably be finished, just jumping on and crushing their team, or jumping Spire. You've got so many options. It's kind of why Spire is probably the most dynamic point in the game, just because from any entry, you can be effective as any class, pretty much. I guess probably the last point about attacking a chokehold is you could go resup. Resup was really popular in Australia not long ago, and some teams still like doing it. But sort of as more teams have started to expect it, a team will be able to like kind of fall back easily enough. I guess we should still touch on it though. So if you're attacking Resup and while they're at choke, you just basically want to be fast. It's similar to what you were doing before as the roamer, but it'll be a pocket this time, going with his demo and just trying to kind of catch their team from falling out.
Yeah, it's similar to the Haunter push, except you're just going to be really aggressive here. You typically want to do a jump from this wall here, obviously, and just land in the valley. Like, not many demos sticky this kind of area. They only really sticky it if they expect your team to have an uber advantage. So their stickies are mainly going to be at the choke area. So this allows even faster access than the house area, and just allows you to, once again, force a really scrappy fight. Like, because their demo, or their combo rather, will just be around this general area here where I'm shooting. And if you're fast enough, you can catch them off guard and force a scrappy fight. But the one main thing you need to keep in mind is obviously players that could be in drop down or in resupply. And a lot of the time a roam or a scout will be in one of those areas. And you just need to be really fast, as I was saying earlier. That's just the most important thing. It does require like extremely good execution, but it can work if it's like what your team wants to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess like the main focus, like we were talking about with the chokehold, is forcing their team back, like whether they uber or not. So I mean, if we just basically like reset that, and we think about a team that has fallen back from choke and is now on Greybridge. So this is kind of commonly the retreat path of not necessarily a bad team, but a team that isn't expecting their opponent to really capitalize on their position. So like, do you just want to kind of talk about like the weaknesses of Greybridge, James? Like,
yeah, so obviously the weakness of Greybridge means you're just a lot further from the choke point. As you can see, the distance is massive. And as you all should know, rockets have fall-off damage, so you'll be doing roughly 40 damage from this range, give or take 10 damage. So you'll just be doing extremely little damage to that area there, and the other team is going to just capitalize on that positional advantage they have. They'll start taking the Pride Rock / jump pad area and start working towards your spire. And the problem with that is you're going to be forced into this little lobby area as a defending team, and you're going to have to either go into the trash area and try and defend from here, or go into the battlements area. And the problem with going to trash is obviously you can get cut off from this Greybridge door here, and that's just pretty much deadly to any team.
Yeah, and like touching on that, like it's really easy for a team to capitalize on you just with aggression. So while you're holding on Greybridge, sort of the risk is getting caught out. Like, you will have players playing at resup, but a roamer or a scout could easily come in, take the jewel, and then look to put pressure on your team. Like, if you force the player out of resup, or if that player is called away to deal with Spire, which they very likely will be, because while you're holding here, the other team, like James said, will be on Pride Rock. They will be jumping up onto the point or putting pressure on you, so the resup player will have to filter down. It sort of just gives an entire avenue of attack for the flank players. They might go up through drop down, or they might just come and spam you just here, and it really does force you back. Like, Greybridge can be okay in some situations, but a lot of the time, because you're sacrificing so much ground anyway, it really is sort of only an intermediary hold, like while you're moving to somewhere else, or I guess in some cases, like, it just depends on your uber percentage as well. Like, if you're looking to hold a team off Spire and you've both got uber and you've lost choke, like, you're almost better off just immediately sacrificing Greybridge and playing either from battlements or in pocket, and that's the same if you have an uber disadvantage, definitely.
Okay, so assuming your team is convincingly won mid, the other team is going to be holding in the battlements area, and that's going to be the point of attack contesting the Spire point. Battlements is pretty much the default hold for Spire, assuming that your team's won mid, obviously, as mentioned earlier. There's a lot of room for the other team to defend, but at the same time, you have a lot of positioning as the attacking team. You have the Pride Rock area, you can push into the trash area as I'm shooting over here, and also push onto the Greybridge area. The default thing that a lot of teams like to do is rotate soldiers on Spire. The simple method of that is have a soldier on 300, jump on towards the Spire, put some cap time on. It forces the other team to put damage onto you, meanwhile your flank could do something, and then your soldiers can just rotate like that. Yeah. And it allows your demoman to push forward either on the Greybridge area as shown here, put damage onto the battlements, or your demoman can just push through the trash area and do the same thing.
Yeah, like what we were talking about with the chokehold, Spire really is about your players. It's about your health, your players, and it's about the cap time. They're kind of the three things that you need to be able to balance if you want to win Spire. Like, you don't necessarily never want to have pressure going onto Spire, but at any point in time you want to have a player actively doing something. Like, you don't want to get stuck in that area that I'm spamming right now. You don't want to get stuck at the bottom of Spire just with your team milling around, just waiting to take damage. You don't want to give up flank entirely and only play towards the point. Like, if you're going to have soldiers rotating, you really need to like keep a really close eye on house and a player coming from behind. And really, you just want to basically out-muscle their team. Like, whether that muscling comes just purely from time on the point, or something that we like to do, especially if we have uber advantage, which is get very aggressive on corner bulk. Like, James or Yuki used to jump very aggressively from here up onto here. We haven't been doing it so much recently, pretty much because like that's kind of been covered, because Sheep and I both like playing through the drop down area when we're attacking battlements. So like, as you can see here, like there are just so many avenues that you can get to the other team. You can jump from Greybridge, you can jump from pocket, you can jump up into drop down. And pretty much you want to do one of those things. Someone on your team wants to do one of those things. Or you want to go under.
Yeah, as we were noting earlier, Uber isn't everything on this point. So it's actually quite wise to use Uber just to force the other team back and get the point. So a thing I like to do, and a lot of teams like to commonly do, is just push through this grey bridge area, because the other team will be sitting on the battlements. As the combo, you can just push in through this area, be it soldier, demo, medic, or just soldier, medic. You just walk in through this area. You can either jump up here and catch the other team off guard while your team is just putting pressure from the battlements, and you can just Uber here and either kill them or just force them back, and your team just gets the cap. Or you can even just push in through this area and come up right behind them. It just allows your team to just get time on the point, which is most important, because it's so hard to push off last, no matter what your advantage is.
Yeah. While you are expendable, as, like, say, if I'm talking about the flank now, like, while you are expendable in most situations, especially a roamer, like, there are a lot of situations where you can die as long as you achieve, you know, probably, like, equal damage on the other team, like, on their key targets. On Spire, like, you really want to trade well. And that's the same for every class. Like, Spire is just so much about players. Like, if you start losing players, if you start dropping off, you should really start thinking about just retreating. Like, it's a fairly long retreat if you come out here, James. Yeah, like, if you've committed your team and you're rotating, it's like soldiers up from here onto Spire. Or even worse, if they're sitting on corner bulk right here and your team's pushing across into pocket to get really aggressive and you drop a soldier and a scout playing behind, you're going to have to run the entire way back to mid just to be safe. And that whole time they're going to be attacking you through the flank and across Greybridge, or a demo might jump you. You really just have to be conscious of not dying, and if you are going to die, like, I guess call early. Like, just really call what you're doing on Spire so your team can react fast and efficiently.
Yeah, on that note, as we were saying, Spire is actually where a lot of rounds are quite often turned around. So a lot of teams, as we were saying earlier, can get wiped in this general trash area or even Greybridge area, and you just get your whole team wiped here, and your team just gets pushed back to your Spire, and it's just back and forth action.
All it takes is like one scout not being watched coming out of house, killing your medic or your demo man, and then the other team pushing forward, and you could lose mid. Like, if you lose too many players on Spire, you will be defending your Spire. And likely, unless you force their Uber, they're going to have a full Uber charge and be walking into you. So it's really something that you want to be kind of careful of. Like, saying that Spire is still probably one of the best points in the game because of that dynamic, but I guess that's a conversation for another time.
And the attack for the battlements kind of lends itself towards the attack into the enemy holding trash. I mean, the enemy holding trash, they're fairly all in too. So you have even more room to just push in through this door if you have Uber advantage especially, and just cut off their team, because they only have one point of retreat, and that is this door right here. So you can just Uber into them and practically kill their team and just win the round right there.
Yeah, like when a team is holding trash, like basically they've got a lot of ability to put damage on you if you're coming across here, and their demo man does have a fair bit of freedom. Like, but at the same time, it just really does lend itself towards stupidly aggressive play. Like, whether that's coming up through drop down, or even just coming onto Greybridge and jumping up into east, like this area that I'm shooting at, and even dropping off here, or going in through house and coming in behind them in lobby. Like, it just takes a little bit of pressure and their team will basically collapse. As long as your players don't, like, kind of mill around in this area and sort of throw themselves at the enemy, like, eventually you'll kind of just win by attrition. Like, preferably before they get Uber, because it's not a bad position to Uber from. But yeah, it's just sort of about trapping them in, like whether that's with your pocket coming in through here or your roamer or whatever. I guess like that's kind of one of the strengths, like going back to battlements. Like when you're on battlements, if a team comes behind you or if you're getting pressured from too many places, you can always drop into pocket. Like, we used to like holding pocket as our first sort of defense, because we'd kind of just play like a check 6 blob and kind of just kill anyone that tried to come too close to us, because scouts would just like run through this channel here and generally just throw themselves at us bodily. But these days, like when we're holding on battlements, like pocket is a valid retreat option, because if that team commits through there, you can get into pocket and then either go around through into front door, or just go like into pocket. Like, is there anything else you sort of want to talk about with pocket, James? Like, I guess it's important to say that like pocket is a really good pushing position. Like if
you get really good damage on Spire, you can just push really aggressively, really easily into the other team. You can just push into this general trash area, just push even more forward. You can do the same thing with battlements, but with the trash area, it's just so easy to jump the Spire from here, and it just gives the other team a harder shot to hit you. So you can just push really forward and just punish them for their I guess dilly-dallying around, because it's an aggressive hold. It's a much more aggressive hold compared to battlements, because your demo is going to be sitting up here on battlements, whereas in trash your demo is going to be generally like really forward in this area, lobbing stickies on the Pride Rock area and this general trash area.
If you ask me, like, given like the way I play Spire, it's easier to put damage on a team that's holding battlements from the actual Spire than it is a team in pocket. Like, in pocket, I feel a bit vulnerable. I don't feel vulnerable to bombing soldiers, but I feel like more vulnerable to the demo than I do on corner bulk. Maybe that's just based on the strengths of the team that we're playing against. Like, but just this kind of fence, I guess, for want of a better word, it's kind of a wall. Is like it sort of shields you. It gives you a really good option, and you can kind of just drop away. Whereas if they're playing in pocket and they are looking to play aggressively rather than defensively, like you can get in a lot of trouble if you get yourself caught out on Spire. And like what we were saying before, one death can snowball into losing your own Spire. So okay, so once your team has taken Spire and effectively kind of bullied them out of this area, before you attack last, you're almost definitely going to have to attack top lobby. And that's pretty much because top lobby is a really easy position to hold as long as the enemy demo survived and possibly the medic and one more player. Like, just with that, it's easy to hold off top lobby until kind of their spawns arrive, and then you just get a long stalemate. So let's just kind of talk about how we're going to break this top lobby hold before we get into last. So I guess the first thing to note is do not pretty much ever try to bust in through bottom or through pocket. It's perhaps the worst thing you can do unless you're feeling really ballsy. Or in some cases, I guess if you have a huge Uber advantage, which is also ballsy, and you just want to pop in there and either like go to last or just kind of jump them and put pressure on them. As a general rule though, especially until you get experienced with your team, just walk up Spire. So you're going to walk up here with your medic, you're going to jump across here. You do want to be fast, but I mean, if it takes you a while and they get Uber, that's honestly kind of fine. Like, preferably they don't, but it's better than losing your whole team and then, like what we said before, basically defending your Spire because you lost Spire so quickly. Alright, so James, if you want to come across here, we'll talk about what we're going to do. So the standard kind of thing, the standard way to break it, is your team's just going to try and muscle the other team out of top lobby. Like, they're going to have all of their players sitting right here in this region that I'm kind of flailing my mouse around. They're going to have their roamer probably like in there or on the stairs, kind of just watching drop down because they don't want you to just bust in there without being called. And there will be stickies and pipes, but like typically those are still going to be focused on front doors, so you don't really have to worry too much about those. So James, do you want to just talk about how you usually bust in?
Okay, so typically if you're just busting in, you don't really want to use your Uber. They'll have, put it in perspective, we'll have about 100% Uber. They'll have maybe 40% Uber. They just want to buy themselves enough time to get Uber and run to last point. You want to try and get this without using Uber. So you're just going to have a little bit of spam battle here with your demo and soldier, maybe just taking pot shots, trying to force them back maybe with a lucky pipe or rocket. However, if they're still not budging and you really want to just put the pressure on them, a lot of the time you can simply just Uber here with either like just a demo scout, demo soldier, just any class like that really, and just be really aggressive onto them. If I was to get Ubered as a pocket soldier, I'd just do a jump here and just pretty much run into the other team, try and get any kills I can, because any kills you get here is just really good because it just allows you to put so much more pressure on the last point and they still won't have Uber to defend that. Not only that, their demo won't have sticky set up on the point, so that can allow one of your players who was previously couldn't get through the drop down area, could maybe come in through the lower main area, as you see here, and just run straight towards the point. Or one of your players can go through the lower right connector and just go straight towards the point that way.
Yeah. Like Badlands last caps in like a second and a half, basically. It caps in 2 seconds at 2 times speed. Like, so if you force them out of top lobby, even using your own Uber, like you can just push with no Ubers, which we'll go over in a moment, and then just kind of try and muscle the point before they get their Uber up. While James and like the combo are either busting from over there, or in some cases busting from drop down. Lots of teams do like coming drop down because it's a really direct kind of like combat here. Basically, as the flank player or flank players with your scouts, you just want to plug all the holes. So like you would come from the opposite direction. Lots of the time I like taking the duel. It's kind of like, it's not too risky really, because if I die, they're still most likely going to fall back because it's usually going to be a trade. And then we'll just wait for my respawn, or they'll push without me. So like that might involve jumping up into drop down, or if you're feeling a little bit, like if you know they've got a soldier sitting here and you don't want to do that, just jump up over here, or even onto this corner, and then just like hold W at him. He'll have to fall back. And then, yeah, you just kind of want to come in with your team, or a bit delayed, try not to take too much damage, and don't get yourself caught out unless you're going to trade. Yeah, because trades do definitely kind of benefit the attacking team more. When you're taking into top lobby, I guess it's kind of worth talking about if it's equal Ubers. You kind of have to like understand that if you're holding last, so if we just switch it over really quickly, if you're holding last and you're holding this area, you're pretty much only holding this area until you get Uber. But if you're here and you still have Uber, or even if you don't, like you're going to be way more likely to fall back than you are to die. So like in some cases, like at corner or somewhere else, like, you know, teams might be way more kind of free with their Uber charge, or even with their life, with their positioning. But holding last, this is like your last defense almost. Like this is your second last line of defense. If you die here, you're going to lose the point and you're going to lose the round. There's kind of no coming back from it. So as soon as you start busting in, that team is going to be looking to fall away. They're not going to be looking to come at you. They're going to be looking to fall away, which is why most of the time you don't need to pop your Uber. Okay, so do you want to talk about attacking last now, James? I guess there's a couple of different things we should talk about attacking last. We've got pretty much we want to talk about in equal Uber situations, in situations where you have an Uber advantage, in situations where neither team has Uber, and finally situations where you've just got a major player advantage. So do you want to take it away with the equal Uber situations, James?
Oh, Uber advantage, rather.
We'll do that one first.
So assuming you get into lobby, this is assuming practically the other team is wiped, but they still have players spawning in time to defend last. You've just taken the lobby area. You want to be thinking, okay, what can we do with this Uber advantage? You've got to be thinking at the same time what the other team will be doing in their position. A lot of time they may do something funky, like having a heavy up in the top left area as I'm showing here, or maybe up here, or a sentry, just anywhere really, just anything to slow them down. Or they might even do something funky and have their demo man above point. And you've got to typically adapt to what they're doing extremely quickly, else you might just screw up the and just not get the point at all. So a very standard thing to do is just Ubering in through the top left, be it on a demoman scout, demoman soldier, or soldier scout. You just want to come in here, just get as much damage as you can, ideally a kill on a utility, maybe a heavy that's here, just force a scrappy fight on the other team. A lot of novice teams especially will just back out into the resup area. That just gives you free reign on the point, so your demoman can just put stickies on the point once it's called, then the rest of your team can pile onto it.
With Uber advantage, quite often it doesn't result in you killing 6 of their players and then capping the point. Like quite often you'll get 1 or 2 kills, or you'll kill their demo or someone important, and then the point will cap, and they'll all be kind of standing around like, you know, oh, what happened? Like, what am I doing? And that kind of comes from really effective play from your combo being able to lock them out and chase kills. Like, it is worth chasing kills, I think, like, when you've got Uber advantage, as long as you don't dive too deep and end up dying. While your flank players kind of come in and do focus on that point and focus on the players that are sort of on the ground. And Yuki just timed out, but that's okay, we can keep going. So, like, as a flank player on Badlands last, like, there's a lot of different options. Like, you do want to have someone probably coming in on top right with Uber advantage, and whether you just play directly to the point. So, as a soldier, a lot of the time I'll just jump off that wall and just stay on the point, especially now that I'm running Pain Train because of the new change, which is kind of ridiculous to the equalizer, unfortunately. Or you'll play through bottom left and just look kind of to scrap up kills. Scouts kind of do similar things while supporting the combo a lot. And as long as you have one player kind of beeline at the point at the start of that Uber, while you've got Uber, and bait the stickies, whether they die or not, and then collapse on it afterwards, you should be able to win. Okay, so in a situation where you're attacking last with equal Ubers, whether that means that you weren't able to force their Uber on Spire and they fell back to last, or that they were able to grind playing forward, or even that you've failed a few last pushes and you've just reset and you're waiting for Uber to pop. Pretty much there are a few things that you want to do that are very different to when you have Uber advantage. So James, do you want to kind of just talk about like what you're going to do when you've got equal Ubers as like a pocket, like on Uber.
Yeah, sure. With even Ubers, you don't really want to be doing so much to their combo per se. You want to be doing more towards their flank players. A lot of the time, teams will have, maybe a roaming soldier or a scout, sniper heavy, something like that up in this area, and you'll just want to be getting an early pick on them because a player advantage, like getting a kill with that even Uber, will just result in an advantage for your team, and that's what you want to have, just getting an advantage. So typically, you'll just very standard Uber through the main area, demo man, maybe a soldier as well, and the demo man meanwhile just puts damage on the top left area onto the combo, which is the default hold. And as the pocket soldier, you typically just jump up here, look for a pick on a scout or a soldier that's sitting up here, and just your team kind of snowballs off that.
Yeah.
You also want to make sure your flank players, though, very importantly, don't just come in and throw their lives while you're doing an even Uber, because you don't want to have a multi-Uber forced on your side. If you can, force a multi-Uber on their side, but not on your side, obviously.
So like while your pocket's jumping up here, just because of that pressure and probably your demo kind of sticking top left, the other team will usually use Uber. So just from jumping up here, even if you don't get that kill, you've effectively taken this area for your team. Now whether you want to hold, that depends on basically how the Uber's going and how your players are going. But from here, like while James jumps up here, sometimes I'll come in from bottom right because I know that soldier might be caught out and try and put pressure on, or I'll come in top right behind him and through here, or even top left. And that's basically what all of our players are doing. We're sort of just all filling in slowly after that Uber kind of is popped and is sort of starting to peter out. Unless James is called that he just wants to get out with the Uber. And sometimes that will happen. Don't be afraid to sort of pop your Uber, pop their Uber, and then just get out. Because if you get that early kill, then you've definitely got a player advantage and you can re-push. And even if you don't get that early kill, basically no Uber pushes on Badlands last, so when neither team have Uber, kind of definitely benefits the attacking team. Part of it's just the design of last point, and part of it's just the nature of the fact that they have to push through 4 points to win, whereas if you do manage to wipe them, you win the game. So I guess, do you want to talk about what would happen, James, if you sort of fall out, don't get that kind of early kill, and then we just re-push with no Ubers?
Yeah, so if I typically don't accomplish anything with Uber, all we've done is force a Uber, I typically call the medic to just go out through the lower main area, and I just retreat through the lower right area. The cool thing about this is I can often even sometimes catch a player around here, be it a scout or a roaming soldier or whatever player it may be. So on my retreat path, I could create an advantage in that way. But assuming you don't, you want to just default back into this lobby area. Just make sure everyone's healed, which is the most important part. Make sure no one's on like 50 health for whatever reason. And you just want to do a kind of like a dry push. So there's a number of ways you can approach this. You can just do what I like to do, which is very standard, is our Roma Aporia typically goes through the lower right area, and I'm preparing to jump here, but I'm obviously not showing myself too obviously. You want it to be a very fluid motion, so you want your roaming soldier already near the lower right door ready to go, and I'm heading through this lower door and I'm going to jump top right. So it's kind of like an even Uber advantage situation, except without the Ubers, and I'm just going to jump top right, and just as I do that, our roaming soldier, maybe a scout, comes in through the lower right or top right area, and we just look to get extremely fast positioning, very fast, ideally get a kill or two, and we just overwhelm the opposition like that.
Yeah, and they'll almost definitely try to stop you, which is why it is worth having one player coming out through here, because if you've got both your soldiers here and you have a scout here, that soldier that's going to jump down from here and jump you from here is basically just going to get denied immediately and die. Like, just pushing like this, you can get 1 or 2 kills. Or if James goes top right and I know that he's already got enough support, I might do something different. Like, I might go through under, I might even, sometimes I like just going through top left, because I know there's no Uber. They have to focus on the point. If they don't focus on the point, it's just basically a lost game. And while our team is filtering in through everywhere, I'm just going to just hold W at their combo, basically, shooting rockets the whole time. And they'll either shoot at me, the demo will be forced to throw a sticky at me, or they'll get forced back into there, and then we'll be able to kind of collapse on the point. So in both those situations we were just talking about, so where there are no Ubers, or even when there are equal Ubers, after that Uber is gone, you really do need to be focusing on the point, similar to sort of the player advantage. Like, killing players on Badlands last is pointless if you don't end up capping the point, and in saying that at the same time, just focusing on the point and not capping the point is equally pointless, so that's a little life lesson there from me. But yeah, you do definitely want to kind of like play your players around to the point. So you want to be able to force them onto the ground. You want to be able to create a situation basically where the demo either has to blow his stickies or you have enough time to bait the point and then cap it.
And just touching on that, bringing the team to the floor, like sure you can get some cap time, but on the same note, for example, if you have a sniper, which Sheep loves to do, and as everyone knows, a very popular sightline for a sniper is just here. Just gives you a complete view of the point, and if you have just even one person baiting the point, that forces demoman to bait his stickies, and that often forces at least one of the players from the other team to drop down and try and defend it. And that just gives your sniper, especially he's extremely good, just an easy headshot, and that just gives your team such a huge advantage.
As soon as those like stickies are baited, especially now that the pain train is a thing, Roma is very, very strong on Badlands last. Once those stickies are gone, you've got two really good options that I like to use. One of them is just jumping off this wall like I did before. If you've got control of top right, or if you know they're sitting back, you can just jump off this wall onto the point. Even if they've got a player on the ground or on the point, you can just knock him off with one rocket while you're flying. And then you sort of cap the point, or you force the rest of their team onto the ground and you half cap the point. The other option is you can do the same thing but from bottom right. You'll just jump off that wall and jump straight onto the point like that. So I mean, I guess that's kind of like a class-specific thing with Badlands Lost. In general, it is about focusing the point. And I guess maybe this is a good time to bring up sort of like team play. Like, well, everyone likes going for the frag vid, especially very guilty scouts. At some point or other, you have to die. And if that death does win you Badlands Lost by baiting the stickies, it's definitely worth it. Like, no one's going to care about your KD if your team wins 10-0, basically. Okay, so I think that's probably no Ubers and equal Ubers covered. I guess we could talk about some variants that you could do, James, but really they're the same focus as the one you jump top right, where you're just basically looking to force a fight where you can create an advantage.
Yeah, typically if you get something like that, like you get the player advantage, you just want to use that extra player to just force the other team into a bad position, and that's typically by one player jumping onto the point. Doesn't matter who it is, except for the demo man. I mean, quite often your medic is actually pretty expendable on this point, assuming he has nowhere near Uber and the other team doesn't. A lot of time, teams will just run their medic onto the point, and that's just another man running onto it, because 5 DM classes... 5 DM, yeah, exactly. 5 DM classes is actually really strong, and just sacking your medic towards the point is actually a big deal.
You can always play slow as well. Like, if you don't get that early kill, you can kind of look to play slow and just put pressure on. And if you don't get that early kill, your medic shouldn't be committed. Like, your medic should probably, I don't know, maybe be like, by the time that kill either happens or doesn't, he should be around this doorway. And you can still die from this doorway, but if you know that kill is going sour and you guys just fall out into lobby and just wait for another Uber situation, like, that's also totally fine. Or you, like, play for one of those kind of, like, niche pushes, like rushing 2 scouts in bottom right and bombing a soldier from top right onto the point or something like that. Like, there's lots of different things you can do on Badlands, and if a push is going sour, like, it's easy to reset. Or even if, like, you lose too many players and your meg gets out, reset and just hold Spire and then take top lobby again. Yeah, like, you can hold a team on last for a very long time. I guess, like, probably the final thing to talk about in this kind of attacking Badlands segment, apart from the 2 attacks that we'll talk about when we're talking about defending, which is retaking Spire and attacking mid, is probably pushing last when you've got a huge player advantage from Spire. So if you manage to, like, basically wipe their team on Spire and you've got like 2 or 3 players or the demo down, it's similar to what we've been talking about, except you kind of skip that first step of creating an advantage. You just beeline the point. Like, it just basically, the entire game becomes about the point. You throw like 5 players at the point and put, like, maybe your Roma running at their demo or something, or like running at their player's top left. Like, I don't think there's really much else you can say about player advantage, like, James. Like, I mean, you can try and snowball and get more kills with it, but usually that will happen while you're kind of walking towards the point, so...
Yeah, you just want to take advantage of the fact that they have a respawn timer of, like, close to maybe 10 seconds, and that just gives your team room to just jump in wherever. A lot of the time, demos will have split stickies. There will be 4 on the point, and, I don't know, maybe 4 around this general area, or around in here. So a lot of the time, what I like to do with player advantage is, as a pocket, I just like to just walk top right with combo and maybe our demo man as well, and we just take this free positioning, because the problem is, since they're down players, they're typically going to have maybe 1 person here max, as opposed to the standard 2, maybe 3. So you just get this free positioning, and then you can start piling players onto the point. Obviously, you don't want to pull what we did a couple of months ago, and I think we jumped 4 players onto the point at the same time and lost them to a demo man sticky trap. So obviously not what you want to do, but you want to do it kind of like lemmings.
Okay, so that ends the attacking Badlands segment of these videos. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed it and that you've learned something just from these general pointers, and that you go away and apply your own team's strengths and weaknesses and play Badlands better in the future. Big shout out and thanks to both Team Immunity and to Chaplain for helping us with this, and also a shout out to Custodian from Chaplain, as apparently he's his main man. If you guys could leave comments below just with some questions that you'd like answered, either about attacking or defending Badlands or just anything in general, we'll get to them in the defending segment of this video. And yeah, so I've been Aporia.
And Yuki.
And thanks for watching.